Welcome friends to the 34th module of AI. In this particular module, we'll continue our discussion on expert systems. In this module and the next module, we'll be discussing about how you're going to develop an expert system. You probably have studied about conventional method of designing systems, and that is a huge discipline and a very grown discipline. But expert system development is still in infancy. There's a lot of uncertainty about the processing. A lot of researchers are working on it, and there are a lot of things happening actually. So it's not as standardized as the structured analysis and design or even object oriented analysis and design process, which is more or less structured today. What is difference here? Remember, the expert system is a different type of a system. It's special actually. In the special in the sense that it deals with experts, it deals with inexact knowledge, uncertainties, difficult to design kind of structures and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of inexactness, a lot of uncertainty in the process, and because of that the development process actually is it's designed in a little different way than the conventional system. So in this module and the next module, we'll be discussing about what are the challenges and what are the approaches how one should go ahead and solve or develop an expert system. As I said, it's a special type of system. It needs special treatment, and there are additional challenges. We'll be looking at some of them. There is a discipline called software engineering. You probably have heard about that. If you're a computer science student, probably you've gone through a course or two. So SE is a well-known subject. What does it do? It basically designs the software project in a way that it looks like an engineering project. Okay, so it has taken the motivation from engineering discipline, and it does that process. It processes it in a way that it is the process, the software development happens like an engineering project. But anyway, system analysis and design and even object oriented system analysis and design and this thing SE are three well known disciplines, and they are doing a lot of things, and people have taken a lot of inspiration from it to design many different types of systems, and ES is not an exception. We are not going to look at how that is done. If you want to study a little more about that, you better read a book from Roger Pressman or take some other book on this thing. There are a lot of good things available about that. We are only going to concentrate the additional challenges that the expert system is going to throw on us, and if you have to design an expert system, we'll have to actually look at them and handle them. So that's what we are going to concentrate on this. And there are some researchers who have extended conventional system analysis and design, like water flow model is extended, the spiral model is also extended, even the agile model is extended for expert systems. There are researchers who have provided a lot of additional inputs from their side. Not only that, there is something called rapid prototype development process. For complex computer systems, prototype is a very good method. Prototype is about developing a kind of model of a system, working model, which doesn't have anything in the background. If you know a bit about computers, what you do is just generate forms and reports without any processing, and let the user go through that and let him suggest any modification that is required. That is going to help you concentrate on the right type of coding. If you don't do that, later on what will happen, user would say that this report is to be changed or this input form is to be modified. The actual code will have to change. If you do not want to do that, the best thing is to prepare a prototype. For complex systems, this is anyway observed in complex system designing process. For expert system, it is a must. Prototype is one very important component of an expert system. So that is one which is very important. Not only that, conventional systems do have databases. In this particular case, usually you have some ontology. So given a word or phrase or something, you can not only learn about that word or phrase, but you also learn about the context in which that word is used. So you can infer better. We have studied about that, so I am not going to discuss more on it, but you know that looking at that, you can infer better, you will be able to reason better, you will be able to answer questions better. Not only that, the plan and scheduling of the components, how the process is carried out, what's the first thing to be done, what's the second thing to be done, and so on and so forth is also done, which we'll be discussing soon. But anyway, as I said, there are few challenges. One of the very important challenges for expert system is that you will have to get an expert for the domain. Without an expert, it is impossible to build an expert system. You can build an extremely complex system, which is very hard for anybody to code and design, but unless you involve expert into it, it is not an expert system. So I'm not talking about systems which are complex. I'm talking about systems which demand an expert. Okay, expert has to be part of it. For example, I'm designing an expert system for intrusion detection. I need an expert who does know what intrusion detection is, how one can do it, and that knowledge is to be coded into computer code. The other example is somebody who knows exactly what is a spam and what is not spam, and that is coded into a program. Somebody who knows who is a doctor and knows exactly how to diagnose this disease, that knowledge is coded into a program, then it is called an expert system. Somebody who is a very good electrician, looking at the inputs, will have a very good position to decide where the fault is and how to repair that. If you code that thing into a computer, it is an expert system. So there are many examples of expert system. What basically it does is it mimics an expert. Okay, so that is precisely what we mean by expert system. We don't say that it is more complex, but it's very, very important component here, the expert. So expert is a must. In a conventional system, usually you have a customer and the person who supplies that system, or the codes that system or designs that system. Okay, so that person and the customer. Here the third party is also involved, the expert. In fact, there is one more thing which is usually associated with expert systems today, and that is known as knowledge management. Now, you probably have looked at some examples where companies having some experts who are really good in that field. In fact, they are so good that most of the time they guide others in solving problems, rather than they don't do that themselves. They don't have time to. They guide others in doing that. Pick up any industry and you will find some people who are doing it. So those are real experts, and now if they leave the organization, there is a huge lacuna, there is a huge problem, because company cannot function, cannot solve those problems. So they want to preserve that knowledge, which is rare. Okay, how do they do it? They distill that knowledge from that expert and store it in something called a knowledge management system, which knowledge management system will help others in solving problems. Knowledge management system is nothing but an extension to the expert system, is a type of expert system which acts like an expert actually. But we are not going to discuss knowledge management system further here in this particular module, but you can understand that it's quite related to it. The other important difference is that there is a guy called knowledge engineer who is also roped in for handling this problem, because experts are experts. For example, if you bring in a doctor and doctor is very good and he is very knowledgeable and obviously has to be pretty busy, he does not have time to understand the computers, he does not have time to enter the code, enter the detail himself. So somebody will have to do it. We have already seen that the guy who does that, who provides this interface, is known as knowledge engineer. So this is another thing which is very, very important. And remember, the role of knowledge engineer is to interpret what the expert is talking about, understand his heuristics and apply those heuristics into that system, in that specific knowledge structure which can get that thing inside. Okay, so one of the important requirement of knowledge engineer is to understand how this knowledge is to be stored inside the knowledge base. Expert probably will have no idea that this is going to be stored in a typical type of a class where these are public variables and those are private variables and these are the methods and all that. He probably have no idea. He would just provide his knowledge, and the knowledge engineer converts that thing into a computerized form using this. So that's an important role. For example, in IDS, intrusion detection system, K will decide that which fields of the packet are to be copied in a data structure. For intrusion detection system, a good thing is that this domain also belongs to computer science. So the particular person, the administrator himself, probably is well aware of the domain and probably will not mind entering data himself, and you won't need knowledge engineer. But if you pick up the medical domain, probably doctor is not all that well equipped or not willing to do it, so you require knowledge engineer. For example, one thing, what type of information that you would like to store for a patient? Would you like to store his age, his height, weight, what are the parameters, and what value indicates what? Okay, that knowledge, if the doctor transmits that information to the knowledge engineer probably will decide that there will have to be a patient class, there will have to be a disease class, and there will have to be an operation class, so on and so forth, and which information is to be stored in which form, that this guy is going to decide. Okay, so that's the other thing which comes into picture when you talk about expert systems. And errors are likely to creep in. It has to. In fact, expert systems expect some errors to happen. Even doctors make mistakes. we all know, and that's the reason why we have to go for second opinion in most cases where the diagnosis is you have a blood cancer, or you'll have to undergo an operation and all that. We'll ask some other expert, okay, because this answer, the doctor's answer may be wrong answer, okay, it might contain a flaw. Okay, so that's the point. Same way expert systems might generate an answer which is false because it is based on obviously the expert's knowledge. So that's the point. So how to handle errors and the tolerance level and all that, that information also is to be decided by the knowledge engineer and should be fed in. There are few things which introduces errors because of the communication issue with the expert and the knowledge engineer. For example, expert has provided a heuristic which KE has not exactly coded inside. There is some wrong, something which is entered which is wrong, or the rules are ordered incorrectly. Okay, I can give few examples of intrusion detection, but that's not relevant. Please understand, if you change the order of the rule, it is quite possible that you will not be able to work. For example, if the rule A is allow anything which starts from 10, and rule B says anything which starts from 10.1, then it should be prohibited. Now that 10.1 rule should come first, because if 10.1 rule comes first, that 10.1 is eliminated, anything other than that is accepted. That should be the rule. If the second rule is placed first, second rule will not be tested, 10.1 rule will not be tested. So that's the point here. So that is incorrect rule ordering. Knowledge mismatch, if KE understands intrusion sensor as something else and expert believes it to be something else, expert believes distributed denial of service as something other than what KE understands, when expert provides a rule, KE implements it incorrectly, and that could also be the reason. There are mission critical problems like missile launch and anything related to that, or even a satellite rocket firing and all that. These are all mission critical systems. If you do it differently or do it other than the required time, or don't do it immediately, the effect can be catastrophic. So those things require a lot of careful calculation and all that. So those things, if you don't take care of those attributes, probably the answer may be correct, comes little later, or in different form than that is expected, and the answer probably absolutely wrong. So those things are to be taken care of, and because of all this, the errors might creep in. And many a times, even if something is wrong, you must go on. You'll have to continue the operation. For example, satellite, you can't just stop the satellite. If something goes wrong, fine. The rocket is misfired, it's just fine. You'll have to continue. You'll have to try with some other rocket or something else, but you can't just stop. The boiler is running, or something, life support system for a patient is running. It has incorrect input, so it should not stop. It should continue functioning. If the oxygen supply is not coming, okay, but the other systems must continue. If one part of it is not working properly, just fine, report it, but the rest of it must continue. Point is, such errors are to be handled by expert system, and depending on the requirement should be handled in the case. Okay, so this again is quite critical issue. Not only that, maintenance of an expert system also is pretty challenging. Why? Because maintenance requires the knowledge update, and knowledge update doesn't happen like conventional systems, and is pretty complex. In the next 36th module, we'll see machine learning will throw some light on maintenance of knowledge. But maintenance of knowledge is pretty hard. Even doctors face a lot of issues because they are not able to update their knowledge, and so that is also quite critical. For example, if you use certainty factors and use some weights for deciding certainty factor for a typical thing, for example, malaria and alternate day cold. So long back, almost all patient who has malaria will have cold on alternate days. But today the malaria has become a very different disease. That thing does not happen now. If assigned weight 35 or 36, a significant weight to it, currently that weight is just not acceptable. You will have to change that weight. So how do you do that? You'll have to learn about that from the environment and change. An expert system work on its own, it has to learn such things on its own. And there are many ways to do it. Machine learning is very, very useful and important way of doing it. But anyway, this is an example of how and what knowledge update is, and that is to be automated in most cases. An expert system who can update itself is a better expert system. Otherwise, that expert system will not have almost no future, because obviously when you are designing a program, you expect it to run for a longer period. For obviously you put in a lot of money, you require to get that return back. If you don't get that return back, there is no point doing it. So the expert system that you have developed now, if it runs for 5 years, probably you will get your money back. So that has to run for 5 years. That has to be updated continuously at least for 5 years. That utility for expert system should exist, continue exist for that period, and this won't happen unless you provide that update. So please understand that this is a very, very critical requirement. But anyway, let us go ahead. These are the differences between conventional design and the expert system design. Now what we are going to do is we are going to look at 7 different steps of designing expert system. I have carefully eliminated all things which conventional system design requires. And remember, here you probably read many old books on expert system development design. Almost everyone assumes that you're developing an expert system is a single system, and the steps are written in that fashion. But in true sense, currently almost all expert systems are designed as part of a conventional system. For example, an Apple Siri program. An Apple Siri program is actually an expert system program which can understand, which can recognize its owner and understand commands and act in that fashion. Okay, but the Apple system has many other programs, and almost every other program is written using a language called Objective C++, and there is something called Swift which is added. Basically, it is something which is accepted by the Apple's operating system called iOS. Okay, so that is a definite system on which, for which these programs are written in a conventional way. Now this is an expert system, PAL, which is augmented, which augments this thing here. So this is a common thing today. You will hardly find an expert system which is standalone. Usually it is part of the conventional system, and that drives us in that direction. So expert system you cannot develop as a standalone thing nowadays. So that's the reason why I am telling you that these are the things which you additionally do irrespective of what you follow. You may follow any structured design process, but then additionally you will have to do it. So these steps which I am talking about are additional to these conventional steps. So please understand that thing. The expert system development process, the first thing is called feasibility. Now you probably think that yes, feasibility also is the first step in conventional system and design. Here the feasibility means something else. Feasibility means that whether the task that you have picked up is really an expert system problem or not. Now there are two different cases where this is not an expert system process. The first case is where this is something which one can solve using a conventional system design process. If that is to be done with conventional system design process, it is better, because conventional system design process is very standardized, very structured, and is almost always, if it is designed properly, is always going to yield correct answers. And once you design, you will have to forget. You don't need to worry about that part. So if anything that you earlier thought that should be part of the expert system and can actually be solved by conventional methods, then that is great. Okay, so that is one thing. And the second thing is something that we expect it to be an expert system, but that you cannot do. For example, expert do a lot of things looking at the condition. A lot of visual inputs are coming in, a lot of other information, a lot of common sense issue also is involved. For example, when a doctor looks at a patient, it looks at the patient, decide that the patient looks quite weak and there are mosquito bites on his face and all that, and based on that immediately decides it to be a malaria, which an expert system cannot do unless you provide auditory and visual inputs and learn to process them. People are working on it, but at this point of time it is not. Conventionally, the expert systems are only relying on the consultation model, the verbal, not even verbal, the textual model. So unless that problem is possible to be solved using that model, it's almost impossible. For example, can you write an expert system to let somebody play a table tennis game? Chess is fine. You can make an expert system to help somebody play chess. Okay, so when somebody played a move, then the expert system would say that no, that's not a right move and this is the right. But table tennis, you will have to let the person learn how to use that racket, how to move that racket, and so on and so forth, which is almost impossible for an expert system to provide. So that is called the feasibility. You decide whether it's a problem which demands expert system solution or not. So that is feasibility. Second thing is called identification. You identify that problem. Okay, exactly. What are the components? What should it be doing actually? Okay, and once you understand and you look at many components, and you will then decide that out of this, these are the components they really need expert system solution. Some of them might not be. So feasibility is actually a rough estimate. Identification is little detailed process which clearly identifies components which require expert system solution. The third one is called conceptualization. Now you actually analyze those programs. You analyze and really understand what comprises of those problems and how each module, each part should be addressed. Whether you need predicate logic for it, or you need NMRS for it, or you need certainty factors, or you need to introduce fuzzy systems into it, or some part does not have any knowledge associated with it, you'll have to have that learning component. You may provide neural network based systems, or for some part you have to design state spaces and all that. So those things are to be done right now. So that is called conceptualization. You don't design it, you just check whether this is required or that is required, and so on and so forth. Once you understand, you know exactly what is expected. Now you decide what will be your expected solution to that problem. Okay, conceptualization clearly identifies what the problem is exactly, and what are expected solutions is designed in the formalization process. Formalization is basically a design process, conceptualization is basically an analysis part. So now you're designing solutions, okay, which solves the problems that you've identified during the analysis part. You're not solving it. But remember one very, very important difference between the conventional design process and the formalization process in this expert system design is that the expert system design is little less structured, because the problems are more abstract in nature, and that requires a lot of modifications even while you're coding. So more stress of that is done in the implementation phase. In conventional system design, only the coding is only coding. In fact, at the time of designing, you do almost every detailing. Every function is completely defined with what it returns, what it accepts, and what are the data structures that it uses, and all that. That is done at the time of designing. Here in formalization, that is not done. Only the knowledge representation system is decided, the database is decided. These things are decided, those fields and all that are decided, but the complete specification is not yet decided. You might say that this will be the class and this probably will be the fields of it. These are private variable, private members and public members, and so on and so forth. They are decided, but they can change. Okay, so with not complete specification is available at this point of time. Even in this particular phase, you also do a planning. So which planning happens when? Implementation is basically implementing it, coding it. Okay, so here some part of design also is used. So this implementation is little more complex than conventional coding. Once that is done, testing and evaluation begins. Testing, again, you probably understand that this is also the same, but testing here is also different. Why? Because testing is done by experts here and not conventional users. In conventional system, testers are usually lowly ranked people who are not as good ranked, as high ranked as the developers. Here the system is designed by developers, but the testing is done by experts, and because the systems are of abstract, inexact nature, is likely to fail as well. So the test cases should be designed accordingly and should be tested accordingly. Okay, it's quite challenging compared to the conventional system. Obviously you will have to evaluate that system and continue evolving that system as well. So that also is part of that phase. Okay, in this particular module, we are only going to look at first two. The feasibility is something that I've already talked about. But then let me repeat that ES is not panacea, it's not a solution to everything that comes across. It only can solve something which follows this consultation model. An excellent example is given in the handout called telephone test. What you can do is you can let the expert sit on the telephone and let the user on the other end of the telephone. If user can explain his problem over telephone and the expert can solve the problem over telephone, then this is possible to be candidate for expert system, because you are solving problem just by dialogue. Okay, so expert system who will provide that dialogue and probably will be able to solve. But if that is not enough, user cannot explain or expert cannot understand user's problem without looking at it, without touching it, without processing it, without really seeing it, then expert system cannot replace that. You will have to keep that process manual, or even you don't even require expert. If there are possibilities of computerizing it, obviously that coding it in a conventional way, then it is to be done that way. Okay, a telephone test is something that I have already talked about. Okay, I have already told you that there are three things. First, expert is involved from the beginning to the end. Second is rapid prototyping. You just develop a prototype, show the prototype to expert, knowledge engineer and the user, and let all of them decide whether it is acceptable to them, and changes are encouraged. If they say that this is not proper, you should change this, change that, then it is like that. In fact, the best way to design expert system is to start with the simplest of prototype, looking at the feedback, continue improving it, and converting into final product at the end. That's the best approach. That takes little more time than other, but this is the best approach because it helps everybody understand, provide their feedback, and it is very unlikely that at the end people would say not this is not the system that we wanted, okay, which otherwise very highly probable. So that's the advantage of using rapid prototype model and encouraging changes. And the second step is identification of that problem, and that this particular step is seriously important because it identifies which part is to be addressed using some methods and which part requires other things. So it has 4 different steps. One is problem survey, which surveys that problem, actually looks at what's what. Then you select candidates out of it, that these are the candidates which I need apply expert system solution to. And once you decide those candidates, you analyze them in a little more detail. You check whether it is really possible to apply expert system solution to them. Whether for this component will I be having an expert. If I don't have an expert, there is no point going for it. It is impossible. Define the exact scope or the boundary, what you are going to do, what you are not going to do. And then obviously economic feasibility is one of the most important things. Nobody would like to pay more than what they earn out of it. Okay, so that is very, very important. So if you say that I am going to develop this expert system and it's going to cost me 50 lakh rupees, and at the end of 5 years I am going to earn 25 lakhs, there is no point developing such an expert system. It's a waste of everybody's time and effort. So that should not happen. Economic feasibility is extremely important, that comes here. So for every candidate you decide that economic feasibility, and then you have a final selection. Based on all this, you decide that these are the final candidates which go for conceptualization. Okay, so that's it. And let us look at each step in quick detail. Identification is basically requirement analysis. At the end of this problem is clearly learned which candidates are to be chosen and why we are doing it. That's very clear. And there are many questions asked. In fact, there is usually a checklist that expert is going to look at and decide. For example, some of them are already provided. Is it really an expert job? Is an expert for this job is available? Okay, what is the value addition if I add this job? For example, if I'm a Samsung phone user, what value addition will I have if my Samsung this thing provides me a Siri-like service on my Samsung phone? What is the value addition for a user, for the company itself, and for an expert? What's the value addition? Value addition is very, very important. If I have a serious value addition, it will result in better economic advantage, better customer satisfaction, and obviously more business. Eventually, it results into better economic growth. So that is something look at. I'll have to ask that question. Longevity. So if I provide this solution and it is very good now, will it going to remain valid for quite some time? How long? Longevity is also very, very important issue. Solution remain acceptable for at least the period for which I get the money back, if not more, at least. There are a lot of other parameters like for example, whether there is uncertainty to be processed. If the uncertainty is not required, probably the conventional solution is good enough. Or need for judgmental knowledge. You will have to decide what to do, whether should I test for malaria or typhoid. That kind of judgment I'll have to make. Whether this packet is malicious, whether this packet requires deep inspection or not, I'll have to decide, and that kind of judgmental knowledge is needed for the system or not. If you have that, yeah, expert system is the solution for you. You require default assumptions? Is it possible to have incomplete information in the system which I need to process? And do I need to validate things, or is there a possibility of something going wrong and is acceptable? For example, when we go to doctor, we know that sometimes the doctor may go wrong, and we are not going to blame doctor every time. Sometimes we do, but we accept that. We know that it is human, or doctor is also human, and that is very, very likely. So is it possible for user to accept that as well? So sometimes you have that in some optimal solution, incorrect answer. So do you allow it? Will users accept it? Obviously, an important question is, when will this be getting over? When will this be completed? Do we have knowledge engineer who can bridge the gap between a computerized system requirement and an expert, who can glean knowledge from an expert and put it into expert systems? Both knowledge engineer and expert must have sufficient time to devote for the system, and they don't have time, probably there is no need to go for an expert system because you are going to fail. And will they receive administrative support, and substantial reference material also is available. So for example, medical domain, there is a lot of other information available. So you don't require to ask the doctor what are the types of disease and what are the symptoms and all that. Those things are available through automative means. So you just copy them from somewhere and continue. You don't need to ask doctor for it. If such a thing is available, we'll be able to utilize expert time in more fruitful fashion. So that is again a query that you will answer. The other issue is whether you will be able to sync the conventional system and expert system. If you cannot do it, it is again a question mark. So there are a lot of things, whether the expert time is properly utilized, conventional part and the expert system part are communicating correctly. Okay, you will have to, like current method is to use XML based forms. Okay, even databases are used, sometimes even flat files are used. Point is it available. Okay, I am for example implantable medical devices which are implanted in patient's body, and they communicate to expert system, a medical expert system, which looks at the information about the blood sugar level and the blood pressure of the patient and pulse rate and things like that, and decide what the course of action. That information is coming in that particular raw format. When that comes in that raw format, will it be able to convert to the format which expert system requires, and so on and so forth. These things are to be addressed, and different types of users are required. And remember, we have looked at that the different types of users, you have to have different types of interfaces. Analysis, every component is to be analyzed on different perspectives, which we have already looked at. Identification phase is basically done to prune the candidates which are not true candidates. So this part is done exactly for that purpose. Applicability of this thing, the expert system solution on this, is tested next. For example, it asks a question whether expert is really an expert. Okay, do you really want to, if you get this expert system, it is going to mimic somebody who is so good that people, there are a lot of people who wants to glean knowledge from them. Is it so? It is so rare. If you lose this knowledge, are we going to have a problem, crisis somewhere in the organization? Do we need to seriously retain this knowledge, so on and so forth? So you will have to ask these questions here and then decide. It is not documented. If this knowledge is not documented, our existence will be in danger. Then it's kind of a question that you will be asking here. And it is quite possible that the knowledge that we are asking for is voluminous, is continuously changing, okay, is coming in different formats, not in the same format, coming from tweets, Facebook posts, conventional flat systems, databases and all that, and also changing rapidly. Okay, so probably you understand what I'm talking about. This is related to big data problem. Okay, that is very, very important. Availability of expert, I've already talked about, is a very, very important issue for this particular case. Defining the scope comes next. I've already told you that defining a scope is critical, because you have to clearly tell what expert system is going to do, what is not going to do. And then everybody, because there are multiple people are in sync working on it, so unless you have that consensus, you're not going to handle it. Okay, so that defining a scope is important. Economic feasibility is important, which already talked about. But one simple rule of thumb is you'll have to decide what's the break point. Okay, when you're going to get your money back, and if you know that expert system size is 5 years, and if this point comes in 2 years, probably you're going to get your money back for sure. Final selection is made on the basis of all this, and once you have that final candidate list ready, you're ready for conceptualization. With that, we come to an end of this module. What we have seen in this module, we have looked at the first phase of expert system development. We have looked at first 2 steps, looked at feasibility, which is not the same as conventional feasibility, a little different, and the problem identification. Problem identification decides whether this problem is really suited for expert system or not. With that, we'll come to an end of this module. Thank you.